With the original Macross era officially completed, we're now in the next step of the retrospective, the Macross sequels. As I mentioned in my Flashback 2012 video, the sequels tend to be a bit more divisive amongst the fanbase. While I'm under the personal belief that the Macross sequels are generally respectful to the source material and expand on the universe in interesting ways, some believe that they stray too far from what made the original work to begin with. Whether it was Plus and Zero with their greater emphasis on the character drama and action, or 7, Frontier, and Delta focusing on the cultural and music aspects, each sequel will naturally appeal to a different type of Macross fan, and usually there's at least one sequel they like. However, when the topic of Macross sequels comes up, majority of people never seem to mention the first Macross sequel, literally titled Macross II: Lovers Again. Macross II is a strange case. As well, I wouldn't say it's outright hated by the community. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who actually considers Macross II their favorite sequel. It's not infamous, but it's not well regarded either. It sorta just exists. This isn't just a fandom thing either. Nearly every time there's some video game, merch line, or concert featuring stuff from all across the series, Macross II is just never featured alongside them. The only time Macross II has been acknowledged as of late has been in this random book where they list out the Macross timeline, and they put Macross II way ahead of the other series as their justification for never acknowledging it in the sequels. I don't know if they'll do anything once they reach this point in the timeline, but I doubt it. There's also these mini Nendoroids that I just so happen to own. I am probably the only person to ever own Macross II merchandise. So why did everyone collectively agree to write off the existence of this series? Well, let's start with one of the biggest factors. Macross II is the only entry in the series to not have any involvement from series creator Shoji Kawamori or Studio Nue. After finishing the original series, Kawamori was adamant on not wanting any Macross sequels. In his eyes, the story of Hikaru, Minmay, Misa, and the rest of the crew on the, well, Macross, was the heart of the series, and with their storylines having already concluded twice by now, there was really no need to continue any further. Sure, we can see what they're doing after the events of the original series, but is that really necessary? Would that really add to their characters in any meaningful way, or would it just be a nice novelty? However, at the end of the day, Big West, the primary sponsors and copyright holders of Macross, are a corporation, and much like any other corporation with a successful series under their belt, they need more money, which means more content. Sure, they could keep piggybacking off of re-releases and merchandising from the OG series, but at the end of the day, it's just a 36-episode series and one movie, so how long can you truly ride that out before it starts fading out of public conscious? Even though Kawamori didn't want to do any sequels, the fan demand was there, and with Macross's 10th anniversary creeping up, it seemed like the perfect time to cook up another entry to the series, and that they did with Macross II: Lovers Again. While a majority of the people who worked on the original series didn't come back, there were still a handful who did. Examples being character designer Haruhiko Mikimoto, screenwriter Tomita Yuhiro, and several others. But the grand majority, they didn't come back. And while you can argue it's a little distasteful for Big West to continue the series without involvement of the guy who made it, they didn't entirely go against Kawamori's wishes. I touched on this a bit in my Flashback 2012 video, but instead of choosing to bring back the original trio and running the risk of tampering with their character arcs, the sequels instead opt to be self-contained stories featuring an entirely new cast of characters, only really using the events of the original for either world-building or harmless references. And Macross II is no different in this department, as the production team was specifically told they would not be able to use any of the original series characters. Despite there being some inevitable discourse on what the series should be like, it seems as if production went relatively smoothly, with it beginning production in 1991 and releasing simultaneously in both Japan and North America in 1992. The discussion about Macross's distribution in the West is a massive can of worms I want to save for its own videos, so I'm not going to go super in-depth about it, but just know that Macross II saw an official localization before the original, and that is really fucked up. Also, who the fuck was the guy who went to go see Macross II in theaters in the 90s? Whoever you are, comment, and you could come on the channel, you could shake my hand, you could meet Asteroids. Another thing worth mentioning is that unlike the original 36-episode TV series, Macross II was released as a 6-episode OVA, and later these OVAs got glued together as a movie, which was just their way of airing it in theaters, so I'm not gonna talk about it because that's not really a movie. OVAs were like the big thing for anime in the 90s, and with all the hell the original series went through due to restrictions imposed by television schedules and executives, opting to make Macross 2 an OVA seemed like a pretty logical choice. And now to answer the question, why is Macross 2 so forgotten? Is the original creator not being involved truly a big enough reason for an entire series to be written off like this? I mean, half of the Gundam series have no involvement from original series creator Yoshiyuki Tomino, yet they're still highly beloved and regarded amongst fans, so I think in order to find the deeper reason as to why Macross 2 has been forgotten, we need to actually talk about the show itself. Let's get it started. Right off the bat, this OP fucking slaps, but unfortunately I cannot play it, or else Molebeat, the totally legitimate holders of Macross music and footage, will fucking copyright me to oblivion. I hate these guys! But yeah, no, this series just has a really good soundtrack after all. They got the guy who composed the Evangelion OST on here. And visually speaking, the animation quality fluctuates a lot during these OVAs, but the OP itself is pretty well done. We start off the OVA with a weird, half-naked, blue-haired girl sitting in a chair. Okay. The OVA really starts in a hotel where we meet our protagonist of the series, a journalist by the name of Hibiki Kanzaki, where he's exposing a secret meeting between two military officials, Exagrand Gary and ace pilot Sylvie Gina. During the filming, we also cut to a guy called Major Nex who mumbles about how he hates the media and whatnot. He's really not that important. Despite them breaking his camera and decking him in the face, Hibiki's story is a smash hit, with his studio praising him for the report. But this unsurprisingly upsets the military, as upholding their reputation is a key aspect to the series' conflict. Hibiki is reluctantly forced to write an apology, and we're given a peek into what type of person he is. He's kind of an asshole. Seriously, this guy only cares about getting good ratings no matter the cost. He isn't a character I feel strongly about either way, but you know what? I'm always down for main characters who start off as assholes. It's simple, but can make for a gratifying character arc if handled correctly. The first person to challenge Hibiki's ideals is veteran reporter Dennis Lone, who scolds Hibiki for prioritizing fame over ethics. As Hibiki storms off, he's confronted personally by Sylvie, who's pissed that Hibiki framed her meeting with Exagrand as a scandal, but Hibiki pulls out the First Amendment card and calls her out for exercising military pressure to silence him. I'm not really sure who the writers wanted us to root for, but I honestly think they're both assholes. Like, yeah, Hibiki was messed up for that, but also, yeah, Sylvie is abusing her military prowess here. But before things can get nasty, an emergency warning is issued as they're ordered to leave classic Macross location Culture Park. Sylvie quickly takes off into battle to deal with some unknown alien threats orbiting Jupiter that they lead the audience into thinking are Strays and Trotty still hellbent on their violent urges, as shown in the 2 years later arc of SDF. And as you do in any Zentradi related dilemma, they deploy the Valkyries and project an idol, which they title the Minmay Defense. I'll admit that got a smirk out of me. Good job, Macross 2. With such a crazy battle going down, Hibiki is paired with a now drunk as hell Dennis to pilot a Valkyrie in the midst of battle in order to record the ongoing fight. A fight that is admittedly pretty cool. The song's catchy, the animation's cool. I had a fun time watching it. However, Macross II puts a spin on the formula, as this time the enemies also deploy music back, and it turns out that blue-haired girl from the opening is one of the counter singers. The counter songs themselves aren't even really songs, it's more so them holding a singular note, but I think that works well. It shows that these entities, whatever they are so devoid of culture that even their music lacks any meaning. As for why they're singing to begin with, it's soon revealed that this new alien species, known as the Marduk, seem to be enslaving Zentradi using these machines, and the songs amplify the brainwashing effects and aggression of the Zentradi soldiers. As the military's getting their asses handed to them, Hibiki refuses to record because, well, showing your military getting their asses whooped would give you pretty shit ratings, I guess. However, Dennis forces Hibiki in there, explaining that this is the true reality of war, and if he has any integrity as a journalist, he should be recording the truth, no matter how bad it'd make the military look. It doesn't really matter though, because the military eventually does begin turning the tide and the Marduk just go away. But before they go away, Dennis tells Hibiki to charge directly into the mothership in order to get the best footage possible. And upon doing so, they stumble upon the blue-haired singer and decide to just kidnap her for some reason. I don't really know why he decided to do that. And then a fucking explosion happens. Seriously, I have rewinded this clip several times. I have no idea what happened there. They were just chilling and then boom, Dennis is fucking dead now. He's just like, I bet those views will be crazy though, and then he just fucking dies. I don't know what happened there, man. I can't say this death particularly made me feel anything, just because of how baffling it was, but also, like, we knew this guy for one episode. But hey, I'm fine with deaths if it helps progress Hibiki's character, I suppose. Anyways, on to episode 2, titled Ishtar, which we quickly learn is the name of the blue-haired singer from before. As Hibiki prepares to submit his report, the military orders the press not to report on anything that went down in the recent battle, likely so they can find a way to cover up anything that makes them look bad. In a moment of growth, Hibiki hands over the footage anyways, in the hopes that the public will bear witness to the truth, and only the truth. After leaving the studio, Hibiki receives a call from his friend Mash, informing him that Ishtar has awoken. Hibiki quickly rushes to her aid, only to find out she doesn't even speak Japanese or English. I think the canonical spoken language in the original series was English. There was English text like everywhere, and they just spoke Japanese because, well, it's an anime. But I'm not sure if this applies to the sequels as well. It was just a random thought I wanted to put out there. Regardless, Hibiki pins her down like a fucking weirdo and straps a device to her ear before pouring her a nice cold glass of sprayed water. This man is a psychopath. The sprayed water is so ass, she just faints upon drinking it. Later when she wakes up, Hibiki decides to ask her some questions before being interrupted by a burst of energy coming from the original SDF-1 Macross located in the center of the city. This is a sight that frightens Ishtar, as she believes it to be the legendary Alice ship, a ship that was prophesized to lead to the downfall of the Marduk by instilling peace within their culture. So basically just the Zentradi prophecy, this is where the originality begins to show itself. Hibiki proceeds to turn on the news in order to see how they presented the footage he provided, only to be horrified by what's on screen. To the surprise of literally nobody, the military trimmed out all the parts where they were struggling in order to make themselves look better. This pisses off Hibiki, thus truly solidifying his one-episode character arc. Look, I get this is a 6-episode OVA, but I don't know, once Hibiki learns his lesson after Dennis's death, he sort of becomes dull. He lacks any notable flaws, and he doesn't have many challenges to overcome that make you want to root for him. From here on out, it's really just Ishtar who carries the show, being the one factor of this series people actually look upon fondly, for reasons we'll delve deeper into later. As Hibiki calls the studio to scream at them, Ishtar manages to escape. While she's running through the city, she runs into this punk who wants to show her some music. This scene's really funny to me because it's framed like he's some jackass who's about to beat her up or something, when in reality he's just chill as fuck, he just wants to show her some music. Hell, when she experiences culture shock and runs off from the music, he even shows concern. You know what, scratch what I said about Ishtar being the saving grace of this series. This guy right here, he's the real GOAT, put him in Macross II. As she runs off in a frenzy, desperate to find the Alice, she's eventually found by Hibiki, who makes her remember love. Why the fuck did I write that in the script? Before eventually taking her to get a sick makeover from his buddy Mash, which, thank God. She was getting dangerously close to looking like Timu Minmay, so giving her shorter hair and her own fashion sense helped elevate her design tenfold. Now that's a design I'd buy a figure of. We also get a diet version of the date montage from Do You Remember Love, and I know it's silly to claim that that movie invented date montages, but with how creatively bankrupt this OVA is, I wouldn't be surprised if they just saw the one in Do You Remember Love and were like, let's do that again. Also, for some reason, Sylvie and her friend just follow them around. Like, they claim it's in case Hibiki tries to do something, like, bad, but you guys are fucking bums. As for the date montage itself, they are cute scenes, but it's over in like 2 minutes, and that's as far as the relationship between these two goes for the entire rest of the OVA, so yahoo! Oh yeah, the Marduk also break in to recapture Ishtar. But thankfully Sylvie was there spying on them, cause now she could take them to safety. Also, Ishtar does like the anime trope where she's like, this is all my fault, I'm a burden, and then she runs off to supposedly surrender herself to the Marduk. However, once one of the generals, named Fef, comes to reclaim her, she refuses to go, thus making me wonder why she ran off to begin with. But yay, Sylvie's boyfriend is here to save the day. Oh yes, that guy from before who hated the news, that's Sylvie's boyfriend, I guess? They're kind of vague with it. On to the next episode. It's the Moon Festival, baby! There'll be awesome air tricks, amazing music, and Hibiki says it's military propaganda meant to distract us from the ongoing war. But there might be some journalism opportunities, so let's go anyways! However, before they go to the festival, they decide to take a detour, as Ishtar wants to see the Macross in person. And as they pass by, Sylvie decides to follow them again. She needs to stop, dude. While arriving at the Macross, Ishtar re-explains the prophecy of the Alice ship, and reveals to Hibiki that she works as something called an emulator for the Marduk, which means she's in charge of controlling the Zentradi with her songs. This revelation surprises Hibiki, as up until this point he was assuming she was a Meltron, aka female Zentradi. She explains that the Marduk are a race hell-bent on war and destroying culture, aka just the Zentradi again. They didn't even try to be original with this antagonist, they just copy-pasted everything beat for beat, the prophecy, their goals. It doesn't get any better from here. Also, when hearing about the prophecy, Hibiki has the audacity to be like, the Macross isn't that special, how could it bring peace to aliens when it literally did that? He's not ignorant to it either, he literally explained it to Ishtar in the last episode. Why are they suddenly trying to convince us that bringing peace to the evil aliens is some insane out there concept? Oh well, maybe the Marduk are more evil than the Zentradi. I mean, they've been enslaving them after all. But that point falls flat on its face when we saw Ishtar, who is a Marduk, switch up and gain culture in the span of one episode. There's no stakes to any of this, because they've given us zero reason to believe that what worked in the last series wouldn't just work again here. This series has given me a fucking migraine, and we're halfway through it. And to make things worse, Sylvie's back again listening in on their conversation. Someone stop her! So Sylvie, who is spying on them, attempts to arrest Ishtar for being a Marduk. But Hibiki lectures her about how Ishtar is chill, and the military are censorship frauds. So she just decides to let them go. I mean, yeah, there's no coming back from that. And we finally get to see the Moon Festival, which is actually pretty cool. It's got some nice visuals, I like the music, and we get a glimpse at the idol behind most of this show's music, Wendy Ryder. Wendy's performance inspires Ishtar as she realizes music can be used to express and achieve things beyond the brainwashing she's been doing. Specifically, the power of love songs and their ability to channel one's most intimate desires. While they don't go as deep as I'd like, Ishtar's arc does have some cool ideas. Most Macross poster girls, and Basara, usually either start the series as ordinary people or are already singers. Meanwhile, Ishtar starts the series as an alien. She's completely devoid of culture and has to learn the beauty of it for herself before she's able to spread it to others. That could be a really cool arc, but because it's Macross II, it's not that cool, but hey, I like Ishtar. Going back to the festival, the Marduk begin to analyze the event and label Wendy as Earth's emulator. So during the final act, where Sylvie flies around Wendy in a Valkyrie, the Marduk decide to invade. Seeing the Marduk ruin such an event upsets Ishtar, and as Hibiki prepares to set out to record the upcoming battle, Ishtar tags along in the hopes that she'll be able to reunite with the Marduk and convince them into taking a more peaceful approach to ending the war. We get a pretty alright action sequence where they put up a solid fight against the Marduk, but once Sylvie notices Hibiki charging straight for the Marduk mothership, she follows after him, cause that's all she fucking does this OVA. Once arriving in the ship, it proceeds to fold, sending them to God knows where. So like that time they got folded on a Zentradi ship in the original, they're really knocking it out of the park here on originality. Next episode starts with Hibiki being tortured in the electric doohickey for quote-unquote brainwashing Ishtar. But in order to not upset her, the Marduk just tell Ishtar, like, no, Hibiki's fine, we just sent him back to Earth. But no, they're actually trying to brainwash him into joining them. But thankfully, Sylvie comes and saves him at the last second. All while Hibiki still decides to report, because the grind never stops. As for Ishtar, she's ordered to visit the master of emulators, Lady Elinch, who tries strapping her to a device that'll brainwash and strip her of her deculture. However, Ishtar has become so damn culture-pilled that the machine simply doesn't work on her. She'd rather convince Elinch the beauty of love. As for Sylvie and Hibiki, they fight for their lives against hordes of enemies, with them revealing that Sylvie is part Zentradi, hence her intense grudge towards the Marduk. They have a bit of a heart-to-heart where they film some scenes for Hibiki's report before Sylvie starts talking about how she's gonna die and shit, but this scene is fine enough. I'm a sucker for watching two characters being forced to come together in the midst of a helpless situation while slowly accepting their demise. But before things can get too sad, Ishtar begins singing, instilling everyone on board with deculture, while also helping Hibiki and Sylvie find her exact location. And when they arrive to her location, Elinch explains that the Marduk just want to destroy every world they deem impure. It is supposedly the will of their master Ingus, and they will kill anyone who stands against it, Marduk included. Before anyone can react, General Fef and his badass mech design, yeah, I forgot to mention, but that's pretty fucking awesome. He comes and takes Ishtar for himself, as the Marduk have initiated a plan to blow up the entire ship in order to cleanse both the humans and the Marduk who have now been infected by Ishtar's song. But Ishtar herself is spared because Fef is a dick rider. But that doesn't really work out because Hibiki and Sylvie escape. On to the next episode. We finally meet our main antagonist of the series, leader of the Marduk, Ingus. He's just a generic, I want to destroy the world bad guy. There's nothing more to him. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that your villain needs to be deeply layered in order to be a good villain, but this guy's not cool, he's not funny, he's not intimidating, he's just a boring character. And speaking of boring characters, back to Sylvie and Hibiki. With the help of Sylvie, Hibiki is able to hijack a news network and reveals the truth about the dangers of the Marduk and their Zentradi enslavement. Something that very much pisses off the government. They unsurprisingly order the arrest of both Hibiki and eventually Sylvie before another battle against the Marduk erupts. This fight is fine enough, the animation has its moments, but honestly, by the later half, it was starting to dip a bit. But as this battle goes on, we see that Ishtar is slowly refusing to perform her duties as an emulator, wishing for a peaceful solution to the war. Realizing that the Earth stands no chance in winning a war against the Marduk, Hibiki, during his interrogation, tries convincing the military that the only chance of success lies in finding a peaceful alternative. An idea that, again, really shouldn't be that crazy considering the biggest war in human history was solved in this very way. With Ishtar being disobedient to the Marduk, this random guy wants her dead, but Fef, being the simp he is, kills that guy instead. And after some convincing that what they're doing isn't right, Fef decides to let Ishtar go back to Earth, likely in the hopes that she can find the peaceful solution she's looking for. Considering his low screen time, I wouldn't say Fef is an amazingly written character or one of my favorites, but I respect the dude's loyalty to Ishtar, he's chill. With Earth getting their asses handed to them, General Exegran becomes desperate and sets Sylvie free from her prison in order to discuss her findings on the Marduk ship and how they can find a new solution to ending the war. She explains how the Marduk all work under the whims of General Ingus, and it's likely that killing Ingus would free the other Marduk from his grasp and end the war entirely. But in order to do this, they need to eliminate the mothership directly, and considering the Macross was the prophesized ship that'd lead to the end of the Marduk, they believe the way to go about destroying the mothership is through the Macross cannon. Ishtar remains determined to find a peaceful solution, Sylvie wants to kill their leader, and Hibiki just begins crying in his room. In the words of this random Anywave comment, "Hibiki got a bit too emotional, felt cringe. I hate my protagonists being babies. Put Ryoma from Getter Robo in there and the Marduk would have been dealt with episode 1, that's all I'm saying." We are finally at the last episode. After receiving the go-ahead from the general, Sylvie busts Hibiki out of prison so they can make their way to the Macross to begin their assault on the Marduk mothership. The war has now reached its peak, with every Marduk squaring up against all of Earth's defenses. Meanwhile, Ishtar rushes to the Alice in the hopes that it'll be able to fulfill the prophecy. After some preparation, Sylvie and Hibiki manage to successfully activate and fire the Macross cannon, which ends up not even leaving a dent on the mothership. I was gonna say it was cool to see the Macross take off again, but they fumbled! With their last plan now failed, and the Earth about to be destroyed, Hibiki and Sylvie embrace each other for one last kiss in what's probably the worst written relationship in this entire franchise. I'm sorry, but these two had no romantic chemistry together, and their quote-unquote romantic scenes didn't go beyond that report they filmed that lasted like a couple minutes. At least Hibiki and Ishtar had that date montage. These two feel like they had no reason to end up together beyond wanting to copy the original series setup of main guy leaves the blue-haired singer for the regular military lady. And then, when Ishtar sees it, she isn't even upset or anything, she's just like, oh, so that's what love is. Like, what was the point of setting up a romance between these two if she wasn't even gonna care when she got rejected? This whole love triangle is so poorly written and forced that I just wish they got rid of it altogether. I mean, this was only the second entry, it wasn't like it had become some tradition they had to oblige by. They were just devoid of creativity, and as a result, copy-pasted what worked in the last series without realizing why it worked to begin with. All of this unoriginality is culminated into the finale. That's just a rehash of Do You Remember Loves, but with a weaker song, worse visuals, and none of the emotional weight. She persuades the Marduk that love and culture is awesome, and they all team up to kill Ingus, leaving us with one final scene. One last scene to prove that these guys have a single creative bone in their butt. God damn it, she's just going off into space to spread culture. That's literally Minmay's conclusion. Did they just give up at this point? Look, Macross II is not a particularly bad series, but at the end of the day, it tells a story I just can't commend. The government censorship plot and Ishtar's alien to idol arc are interesting concepts on paper, but it seems like the crew got cold feet at the last second, and instead of expanding on those ideas, they rushed back to what worked in the last series. And they didn't even realize why any of it worked. I do not believe Macross II has been forgotten simply because Kawamori wasn't involved. I believe Macross II has been forgotten because it's a forgettable series. Regardless of how you feel about the Macross sequels, there is no denying that they have their own identity. They take the universe established by that original series and bend it in unique and original ways, for better or for worse. Macross has such a strong foundation that it would take a real idiot to make a Macross series that's outright bad. So long as you have cool mecha action, catchy music, you've achieved a serviceable anime viewing experience. But that's all Macross II is. Serviceable. Do I think it deserves the reputation it's gotten? Well, it's not as bad as some people make it out to be, but in the grand scope of things, it contributes nothing to this franchise's legacy. It's the white bread of Macross, a 6 out of 10 in a franchise that's pushing 9s and 10s constantly. Clearly, this is something that even executives and creators have noticed, cause it gets featured in absolutely nothing. Not even Super Robot Wars, which, honestly, if your mecha anime can't get into Super Robot Wars, you might as well throw the towel. They got Cowboy Bebop in that shit. That's not even a mecha anime. Speaking of Cowboy Bebop, next time we will be having a look at the first true Macross sequel, Macross Plus, which happens to share the same director and composer as Cowboy Bebop. And spoiler alert, it's fucking awesome!